we invite you to participate in our section and to speak about these possibilities of the partnership between Ukraine and Europe, because we hope to achieve very positive results from the cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zinovi, and dear colleagues. I'm really glad to be here. Dear friends, colleagues, participants of the forum, and honorable guests, I'm very glad to greet you at our panel on the second day of the Ukrainian Economic Renaissance Forum. I'm Yaryna Boychuk, and I'm the CEO of Lviv Business School of the Ukrainian Catholic University. And the panel today will be dedicated to very important issue for Ukraine, and I believe for Ukrainian business too, as for the investors whom we want to inspire to put Ukraine into their investment plans for the future. By the way, our big dream and vision of the business school is to see Ukraine on the business map of the world. So maybe it will help too, and it will be part of the work we do. Ukraine, European Union, tools for partnership. This is the big theme for our this panel. And believe me, we have here a very honorable and high-level representation in this panel. People who not only know, understand, and support Ukraine on European arena, but certainly have ideas for our transformation and development for the future. So I really want to believe it, and we'll see we here, I'm sure. And the first panelist whom I want to start from, please also, I just want to remind you that you can input your questions in chat, so we can ask them to our panelists and our guests. So the first panelist will be, speaker will be Hans-Josef. He is president at Energy Watch Group and ambassador for 100% renewable energy. He's also former member of German Parliament. He's an internationally renowned energy and climate change advisor for governments too, author and speaker. Mr. Fell, I have got a secret note that certain tragic event in Ukraine in 1986 brought you to the idea of need to influence and change the energy law issues in Europe, for instance. But I hope that you want to do it for the whole world. And you have your own experience too, because of that, how to provide global changes from the bottom up, and not to wait that someone will make them for us from up to us to bottom. So now the floor is yours, Mr. Fell.
One technical question, also some minutes will be with Hans-Josef. Maybe we'll start with Stefan Gsanger, and Fel will be in some minutes, okay?
Okay, of course. So I can represent also Stefan Gsanger, Secretary General of World Wind Energy Association, advisor to governments in international organizations, who I'm sure looks into the future of sustainability of the world. And because he's also the co-founder of a couple of international organizations, all of which aim to sustainable development goals of the world, which we all know already. And I just want to mention that we here in business school in Ukraine, we already have developed the course on the sustainable development goals. So that's very important for us, but also I believe it is important for the businesses who want to be in partnership with European and not just European organization, because without those sustainable development goals being input in our business models, we can't move further, and we can't proceed being global. So please, Stefan.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
First question. Secondly, can you see my screen?
Yeah, that's fine.
That sounds good. So thank you very much for the invitation and for the nice introduction. Indeed, it's a great pleasure to be with you. And just time-wise, as we changed this a little bit, I have now, it's around 20 minutes for my speech. Do I?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, I'm just now participating in many webinars, and just yesterday we had our own, and then it's so important. I try to be stick to the time that we've agreed. So what I want to present you is some figures about wind energy. I personally, you've already introduced me. I'm working for an association which has members in more than 100 countries. We have, for example, the Ukrainian Wind Energy Association as one of our members, and Andrius, many of you will know him. He's one of our vice presidents. So we are working for the promotion of renewable energy around the world, of course, with a special focus on wind energy. And I'm also, in my capacity, I was also one of the co-founders of the Global 100% Renewable Energy Platform, where we also have close ties with Ukraine, like also Hans-Josef. Ruslana is one of our ambassadors, and we just had the World Renew Day celebrated together with her on last Saturday. So I'm actually one of my last trips before we had our break has started was to Ukraine in February, and I've with great interest always followed what's going on. Let me underline that for us as World Wind Energy Association, we do understand we have kind of two pillars of our work. One is that I've already mentioned is the goal of having as a 100% renewable energy, full renewable energy supply worldwide. And the second goal is, of course, closely related to that, focus primarily on bottom-up solutions, because renewable energy is, of course, offered in a decentralized way. So the way how we harvest renewable energy is done in a much more distributed way. And that, of course, also has socioeconomic consequences and impact. And that's one reason why we focus on community power, community energy. That means local ownership of renewable energy and wind power in particular, in order to make sure that there is a smooth process and also that people are benefiting, citizens are benefiting. I think this is absolutely in line with you as the hosts of this event. So just briefly back to the association, you see here the world map, and the dark blue countries are the countries where we do have members. It's quite covering the world, and it's now direct members, more than 600. Many of them are national associations, as I said, like Ukrainian, Chinese, German Wind Energy Association, and we've had 18 World Wind Energy conferences so far. So when we look at just the development of wind energy, this is quite an amazing success story, of course. Actually wind power or wind energy utilization started thousands of years ago. We know that humans used thousands of years ago wind for propelling ships, sailing boats. We know that the first windmills were used probably in Persia, what is Iran today, also thousands of years ago. But modern wind power utilization started around end of the 19th century, but the way how we do it today, that's not that old, it's like 40 years. And of course, we know that there was a first start 100 years ago, where the Soviet Union was one of the leaders, and I understand that Ukraine played an important role in this as well. But that kind of disappeared. And then it was in the United States, and then later in Denmark, and then later in Germany, where the modern wind turbines were used. And you see here the growth since 1980, when we had 8 megawatt installed capacity, 8 megawatt, and now we have 655,000 megawatt. So every red arrow you see is a 10-fold increase in installed capacity. It is quite amazing, and today we are supplying 6% of the world's electricity demand, and of course I think the prospects are very bright, and the long term will certainly be 30, 40, maybe 50%, depending on the development of other renewables. So now I need to see why this is not moving. Okay, now it's moving again. These are the installation figures of the last couple of years. As I said, end of last year, with around 650 gigawatt. There was a growth of around 10%, more than 10%, and here you see the leading countries. China is by far the world leader in terms of numbers of absolute capacity, followed by United States, Germany, India, and Spain. When you look at the other angle, Denmark is the leader in terms of wind power share. They have a share now of more than 40% of their power produced from wind energy. So that is the reality today, and that's what every country should aim at and can do. Not to forget, when we speak about what I spoke before, that's usually large wind turbines, now multi-megawatt wind turbines, but we, as well, the Energy Association, also work on the small wind market, and I know that this also plays a role in Ukraine, and in particular, you also have manufacturers, small wind manufacturers. That's an also important technology, although not that visible at the moment, because PV, which is another kind of small-scale technology, is of course has become so cheap. So we have now more than 1 million small wind units installed around the world. That again is even more focused on one country. Most of them are installed in China. So imagine that is almost 900,000 units. But that means you have millions of people in China alone who get their power from small wind turbines. In China, it's more often used in isolated areas. That's also the case in other places, but then sometimes the turbines are grid connected. Now, let me come to the kind of the main focus of my presentation, and that's the importance of local ownership of what we call community power, which is very closely related, of course, to the cooperative movement. What we see is that local ownership of renewable energy, in particular of wind power, is a key in the deployment of renewable energy because it multiplies the benefits of renewable energy. Of course, climate change mitigation doesn't matter who owns and where the wind turbines are located. But when we talk about other advantages of renewable energy, of wind farms, and that's the added value, the generated value that is added if the wind farm is owned locally, is added and stays in the local economy. Of course, many people speak about it's important for local acceptance, but we believe that that's much more than acceptance, because we see in those countries where such broad ownership models are common, it's not anymore that you need to convince the people that they like the wind turbines, and that's not always automatically the case. The people want it, and then it's often rather the opposite way, that the governments need to be convinced to be less prohibitive. So at the end of the day, of course, when you strengthen local structures, economic development, you also strengthen democratic structures, because it's not anymore a centralized power plant where you have your power coming from, but at the end, it's locally, primarily locally produced energy, which is also used locally, and the people who are living at the village, they can decide also, of course, on the city level, they can decide about how to use, what to install, and that's really, these are decisions that need to be taken on the local level. So we see a kind of the opposite of a vicious circle, a positive circle, which comes out of local ownership, because, and of course that's even more the case when we talk about developing countries where access is still a problem. Once you have created access, then of course you have the basis for more economic activities, and that again creates more profit which can stay in the local community if you have local ownership. So in other words, community power is a lot about maximizing social benefits, socio-economic benefits, we should say. But of course, there's the big but is that national policies and legislation must be supportive. And then we should very clearly be aware that most of the power legislation has been designed for centralized systems. So we have also, when we talk about base load demand, things like that, this is just the language even coming from the old power system, the old way we use with centralized sourcing of energy sources, gas coming from a few gas fields in Russia, let's say, or oil fields in the North Sea, or coal mines in some parts also in Ukraine, you have that, but renewable energy is everywhere, so you need to really to have a different regulatory framework, and that needs to be taken into account. So to be a little bit more precise about what community power means, we've come up with not exactly definition, but criteria for a definition, also to be clear what that means. And I think the most important part is owning actually shareholders. Locals are shareholders of a project. Then related to that, the voting right stays with locals. And the third aspect is where the profit goes to. There is some cases where for legislative reasons, people have to bypass a bit their legislation. So we said if 2 of the 3 cases, it's with the local population, then we call that community power. And it's quite encouraging to see that indeed there is an increasing interest around the world in supporting legislation, in supporting local communities in becoming part of the energy market. And I've just put some country names here. Of course, it started in some countries. I would say Denmark was certainly the first country. And the share you were allowed to own in a wind turbine was even limited. Either as a farmer, I think you could have 1 turbine, or as a member of a cooperative, you're only allowed to have a certain share. Now, even the European Union, I think this is important now when we speak here, has come up with legislation, a regulatory framework requirements, which has introduced energy communities. And there is now an obligation for the EU member states to allow their citizens to use renewable energy for their own consumption without any burdens, without any extra levies. That's important because some countries, when you have your own solar on your roof, when you have your own wind farm, they still charge you some surcharges which are not really necessary. So some people say it's like taxing the apples that you grow in your own garden. So European Union has such requirements now. It's more and more countries, and I will come briefly back to that. We just had yesterday a webinar where the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, was taking part. UNIDO was taking part. So also on that international level, we hear now that the work that we've been doing, they're very much interested because they want to also work in this area. We've done quite some work in the field, as I've already indicated, starting actually more than 10 years ago when we had our World Wind Energy Conference. It kind of emerged from the work we've been doing in Canada with the World Wind Energy Conference in 2008, where we also understood that the meaning actually, I'm personally coming from Germany, so we German use the word Bürgerenergie, which means citizens' energy or citizens' power, which is more related to the individual, but in English you use the term community power, and that kind of emerged and has become then kind of a global narrative. We've now even organized 2 World Community Power Conferences, the first one in Fukushima. Fukushima was on invitation of the mayor of Fukushima. Of course, Fukushima, the citizens there, and I don't need to explain this, I think, to anyone in Ukraine, what it means to just be connected with a disaster, and they don't want that. So Fukushima and the prefecture and the city, they really want to have a positive story around their area. And that's why they have also decided, they have approved 100% renewable energy target. They want that the citizens now play an active role in making their prefecture and their city renewable. And they are doing quite well in this. The second was held in Bamako, in Western African country, one of the poorest countries of the world. And of course, there the situation is quite different because, I mean, outside the big cities, almost nobody has access to power. And there we talk about how do we find the investors which are capable of raising the money that is needed. And then we easily come to the point that if we use community energy, that means local ownership models. And the point is not the cash flow. People are able to pay for the power, but how to capitalize on that. So with local ownership models, it should be even easier to overcome that equity gap that we see, that cash flow is there, but get the finance and find the right finance model. Now, Corona has forced us all to stop to a certain degree our activities, of course, especially as an international organization where we are regularly organizing international conferences. One thing I would say is that this, on the one hand, is kind of now, it seems to separate us because we're not at the moment allowed even to travel internationally. But at the same time, it has good aspects because you see, we are all getting now again reconnected to where we are and becoming more aware of our environment. And that's important. I just noticed, just as a very simple example, that people now dare to speak more about their families, and people dare to say, hey, I need to stop now because I have to pick up my children. Or people understand what it means, whether you're not spending your time anymore that much in planes or trains. And we're getting better connected even, still being where we are. Now I'm in Bonn, not far from the UN campus, by using, like here, Zoom meetings. And we are now also holding a series of webinars, and we had 2 webinars recently held on community power. The one was related to the industrialized world. And just yesterday, we had a very interesting one, community power partnerships for developing countries, which was mainly aiming at trying to identify ways of how we can work together and help each other, communities, citizens help each other to overcome, for example, this finance gap that I just mentioned. You will find all these recordings, and you will not need to look at the individual, you go through all the, but we have individual speeches. You will find all the recordings on the website, on our main website as well. So we're working on the global level, create awareness of the importance of the local level, working with Yaryna, for example. I'm personally chairing the community energy working group there. It's also now going into the work that Yaryna, for example, does on the COVID-19 crisis. And of course, the basis for what we do, what we say is, of course, always working with our members very closely. And then let me just, before I come to the end, mention that we did a study for Germany, which certainly is the country with the biggest share of community power in the power sector now. It's the mainstream model, or used to be the mainstream model. Now, after Germany introduced in 2017 auctions and replaced the feed-in tariff, I think that's the process that you are just going through in Ukraine, we were afraid that that would have a negative impact on the community energy sector. And we did a long-term study on that. And indeed, the outcomes of that are not so positive, because there were 3 goals that the German government came up with. First, compliance with an approved expansion corridor. That's, of course, a positive way. In fact, they wanted to limit renewable energy expansion, in particular wind. So after almost 6 gigawatt of installations in 2017, last year the market collapsed and saw just around 1 gigawatt of new installations. Improved cost efficiency. Actually, the prices now after the auctions are higher than before. That's also quite interesting development. And preservation of diversity of actors. Community players are very, very under pressure now, very much under pressure. They really have problems. So this is something that needs to be considered, because we know very well what works. We need open markets, we need open market access, of course, and not market and policies which exclude some players and only allow big companies to play. We see this in India, for example. After they changed now to auctions, they had a strong small, medium-sized companies, an SME sector, which dominated the wind sector. They are now out. Last auctions, only 2 international companies took part. So that's very important. I think that governments, policymakers understand the importance of community and citizens-driven investments. There are certain ways of investment that do not work. We know some do work, but I think in general it's important to say it must be inclusive. We must allow also smaller investors to invest. And when we, of course, talk about certain segments, and in that sense I just referred to developing countries, we have to find models. People are paying for the power. Why should they not own the system, control what they get from? I mean, in water, it's often public. Why should that not be the case? And a very important point I want to make at the end is that now we start to hear from governments around the world that sometimes it's even not billions, but trillions of euros or dollars spent for recovery programs. they must focus. There's, I think, now increasing awareness. We must focus on climate change. There's a little bit less, but also bright consensus on renewable energy. You hear that from many countries now. We focus on renewable energy. What you do not hear that often, but indirectly, is it must also focus on decentralized solutions, on approaches like community energy, on local players, on local investors. And I think in other areas, it's very clear. We were all shocked that when we noticed that, for example, these masks that we now have to wear in many countries, they're not made in our countries, but they're all imported from, well, some believe China. Actually, one former colleague sent me some from China, kind enough. And then 1/3 of what she sent me was made in Colombia. So even China is depending on international supply chains. And our governments are now understanding that some of these products we need to make ourselves. And certainly energy is kind of the blood of an economy. And if we can, it must be done as broadly as possible. It will make countries and communities much better resilient for economic crisis in the future. That's my last point I wanted to make. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stefan, for so many very, not just interesting, but inspiring issues and details, which we should, I think we should see them as opportunities for us, for our communities, also, of course, for our legislation development. We all understand what kind of problems we have here, but also this is another field for transformation too. So that's great news. And also it aligns very, very nice for me with, we often use this thing, global, act local.
Absolutely.
So this is
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Then we will proceed with the discussion later on after having at least 3 speakers here. So I suggest that we give the floor to the next speaker. It's Andrius Kubilius. He's a Lithuanian politician and a member of European Parliament. He served as a Prime Minister of Lithuania 2 times, from 1999 to 2000, and then again from 2008 to 2012. And I believe Mr. Kubilius is a good friend of Ukraine too, and understands the challenges Ukraine is facing for a longer period till now, because Mr. Kubilius knows us and visit us for quite a long period already. And also what Europe's support can be available for us and on what conditions, which is very important for us also. And I know that Mr. Kubilius knows which successes Ukraine and we here must make and develop to be closer to Europe. So, well, Andrius,
thanks a lot. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So really pleasure to be part of this very important seminar. And I am not an energy expert, but I will try to continue what Stefan have said before. Exactly, because if you look into European discussions, what we have in European Parliament now, we are talking about 3 topics: recovery, going through digitalization, and Green Deal. So, and Green Deal, of course, that's green energy, first of all. So in some way, I will try to speak, what I think is important also for Ukraine to understand and to see as new possibilities. And since you have mentioned my experience being Prime Minister, I had such a fortune to be Prime Minister during crisis. The last time exactly we won elections, in 2008 in October, when Lehman Brothers collapsed in September. And we spent 4 years, fighting the crisis. Before that, I was Prime Minister at the end of 2009. And it was so-called, in our region, we called it Russian crisis, but globally it was called Asian crisis. So, and out from that, experience, I came with very simple, conclusion, really, that, which is repeated by many politicians. Don't waste a good crisis. Crisis is a good moment to make, reform steps forward, and that is what really is very important, both on EU level and also for individual countries like Ukraine. So, and of course, I was visiting Ukraine really, as you have said many times, both as politician, also as friend of Ukraine, I am joking that I can become, an advocate of tourism in Ukraine, because we had 3 bicycle tours, and we missed this year because of pandemics. We became afraid to come on bicycles to Ukraine again. And my conclusion is very simple. Ukraine really has very big economical potential. Really, it's a huge potential in every sphere. Starting from agriculture and ending, with industry and high technology. That potential is, of course, still not used in a most effective way, and that is why really I can predict that with some conditions, if Ukraine will manage to resolve some major issues, economical growth can be huge in Ukraine, because that potential, which is not used, can bring really a lot of very strong and rapid growth. What is needed, at least my experience. Of course, first of all, really some basic conditions like rule of law and European type regulations of market, of industries and so on, which you are doing. Of course, that is quite not an easy job, but recently what Ukraine did with land reform legislation is really very important. All the debates which you had, it remembered me our debates back in Lithuania, but we had those debates back in 1995, 1996. So Ukraine is late a little bit, in like 15 years, but very similar debates we had. And second, what is needed besides European regulation, of course, money and investment. And I will spend a few minutes, speaking exactly about that topic, which is needed both for green energy, for everything. So the question is how to attract investment and money, different sort of money, from outside. That is one of the questions which which I had a possibility to look much more deeply when we came out back in 2017 with an initiative which we called at the beginning Marshall Plan for Ukraine. Then we changed the title to European Plan for Ukraine, but that was exactly our idea, was how to assist Ukraine to attract a big amount of money, not only from such sources like IMF or EU macro financial assistance, which is going, to stabilize, finances, but how to attract money which can be used for investment. Money which could go directly into real economy in order really to boost the growth of economy. And we traveled quite a lot with Ukrainian politicians also during different capitals, starting from Berlin, Brussels, London, Washington, D.C., with former chairwoman of Rada Foreign Affairs Committee, Hanna Hopko, with some other parliamentarians. We traveled a lot and we learned quite a lot again. What are the problems? Problems are not with money resources in the globe, in the world, or even in Europe. Now, especially during this crisis, it's totally different, even in Europe. I remember very well, our experience back from 2008 to 2012 during that crisis, where the biggest problem was where to borrow money for the country, for Lithuania. That was very, very big challenge. Now the challenge is where to spend money, even for European countries, because availability of money really is a huge one. Just this, recovery plan with 750 billion euros and next multi-annual financial framework with 1 trillion 100 billion makes really big financial instrument in EU, which we are really discussing now where to spend those money. So, of course, not all of those money are available for Ukraine or for other countries, but in general, I would say money is not a problem. The problem is where Ukraine is going to spend the money. And when we were traveling around with that, idea of Marshall Plan, and then we got very simple numbers. All different international financial institutions, like European Investment Bank, BRD Bank, World Bank, German KfW, starting from 2014, they promised to spend in Ukraine around of 12 billion euros. The money which would be spent in real economy, like investment into infrastructure, business developments, and so on and so on. According to last year data, Ukraine managed to use, out from those 12 billion euros, Ukraine managed to use only 2.5 billion euros. And this is what we call absorption capacity problem. As I say, the problem is not where to find the money in the world. The problem is how to make, those money really invested into business plans, bankable business plans, how to prepare those plans, who is going to coordinate all those flows, and so on and so on. So that is what I would say really for Ukraine is one of the very important tasks. We were working quite closely with different governments, with in previous parliament, with government of Groisman and Vice Prime Minister Subko. We finished even, I saw among your speakers, former Canadian ambassador, Roman Boychuk. So we managed, we had a good cooperation with him. And I don't know how this, but last year in February, we managed to convince both Canadian government, Lithuanian government, and Ukrainian government to sign a memorandum of understanding. And Canadian special agency with special program came in to teach local authorities how to improve their absorption capacity in order really to get access to those big amounts of money which still were not spent in a proper way. So that should be done also on national level. Unfortunately, we were not able to convince the government and other authorities because each ministry wants to keep control of some flow of the money. And then it's very difficult really to agree among them which institution will take care about coordination of all the flows. We had similar problems back in 2000 when we started to get access to EU funds before we became members of EU. We got very similar problem. Then we created several institutions. In Lithuania, we brought them to show their experience, for Ukrainian partners recently. And those institutions really were working like development banks. We do not have development bank in Lithuania. We have agencies, investment agencies, and so on. But they're working in some way similar to development bank. And that is what we were trying to bring that experience to Ukrainian authorities. I don't know, then I moved to European Parliament. I was not able to look very deeply more into details. We were speaking with the previous government about those issues, but I think that really that's what would be my advice, from my experience, both from Lithuania and also dealing with Ukraine and knowing, how those financial institutions, European ones like EIB, EBRD, and others are working, that really it's some kind of really very narrow bottleneck in Ukraine. And if you would resolve that, problem, if you would speed up, really preparation of bankable projects, if you would have a list of most important projects which you want to, to have that investment coming into those projects, that would maybe, I hope that can create totally new atmosphere, because a lot of those, financial institutions, international financial institutions, they were speaking in a very simple and clear way. They want to, to invest. They want to have a profit in Ukraine, but they cannot invest if there are no good projects, no good plans, and that is a problem. Money is not the problem. Of course, always borrowing and so on is quite an issue, but the bigger problem for time being, is on Ukrainian side, and that is, why really, in order to get access to all that European assistance, which we are trying to push here in Brussels, some new possibilities, new instruments for Eastern Partnership countries, especially for three or most advanced countries like Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova, some kind of new financial instruments which EU is using, for example, for Western Balkans. But again, always we are getting to very simple questions here in institutions in Brussels, when experts are showing the numbers, how much they are offering, different financial instruments from different IFIs to Ukraine, and how little is absorbed. We have no argument how to convince that additional money should be allocated for Ukraine. So that's my point. Sorry that I will need to leave. We became Zoom addicted, and we're jumping from one seminar to another seminar. And since some things started to happen in Belarus, so I will need to switch from Ukraine to Belarusian Zoom. So thanks a lot and good luck.
Thank you very much, Andrius. Very, very important points for us, and I think it sounded like like a homework that must be done for us. So I don't know about our participants and who listen to us at this forum and in different channels, but I personally had even some ideas, and maybe we can connect also somehow and think maybe deeper about it, because we are in the middle of those sites that you mentioned, because we are business school.
Yeah, sure. Your advice for government or for regional authorities, I would say that maybe it could be good for some regional authority to become something like a pilot project and to create really a good absorption infrastructure, to get those money flowing into the region.
Yes, and also for businesses, because businesses are the most pragmatic in these issues, so they know better. Thank you.
So
thanks
a lot.
Much.
Thanks. Bye.
Well, thank you, Andrius, again. And now we have another great speaker here. So, and it's Hans-Josef Fell. Mr. Fell, I will present you the second time already. So we started from you. Unfortunately, you couldn't join us, but now I want to present you. So Mr. Hans-Josef Fell is president at Energy Watch Group and ambassador for 100% renewable energy, former member of German Parliament, He is an internationally renowned energy and climate change advisor for governments, author and speaker. And also, Mr. Feli, I have got a secret note that certain tragic event in Ukraine in 1986 brought you to the idea of need to influence and change the energy legislation issues in Europe, and maybe not just in Europe. And you have your own experience how to provide global changes from the bottom up. And of course, maybe you will have also some suggestions for our businesses and our communities, how to use this field for growth, of course. So now the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, for the kind introduction. And I must excuse myself. I was shortly confused with a Zoom link, and so I could not join, but now I'm happy to stay with you. Can I show my presentation when I go here? Do you see the presentation?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
That's fine. Okay. Thank you. So, Green Deal, European Union and Ukraine is very important. It brings plenty of new possibilities for collaboration and for the right things what we need. We need more. Do you hear me still?
Yeah, that's okay. Everything's okay.
Okay. We need to reflect over what happened in the last months. Healthcare crisis, Corona crisis stands in the center. We have seen about 400,000 Corona deaths globally in these months. And we should remember air pollution brings per year 7 million deaths in the world. Only in Ukraine per year 50,000 deaths. That means the pandemic is not so heavy like air pollution, like environmental polluting causes. We have also plenty diseases, death people because of water pollution, because of radioactivity. You could see that Chernobyl brought a lot of diseases in Ukraine and elsewhere. When we switch to 100% renewables world, all these diseases will go. It is a more impact for healthcare, for good health, for the people, to go to 100% renewables than all Corona activities could do. And there is a link even with it. Most Corona deaths are in regions where the people have diseases with their lungs, and this diseases mostly comes from air pollution. It was in Wuhan, in China, it was in northern Italy, in Madrid, and in other towns. Therefore, when you want to fight against the pandemic, you must fight as well, parallel, against air pollution and all the other diseases. Without fighting against it, you cannot overcome the pandemic. Therefore, renewables is much more than climate protection. It is the best way to save our healthcare. But climate protection is even more important as well to fight against the pandemic. Because the disasters, what we see already because of climate heating, are so tremendous that we must look to it. And other issues from the global energy system as well, not only climate warming. Nuclear power, for example, has a lot of disasters. In Ukraine alone, we have 1.8 million people who have the status of victims of the Chernobyl disaster. This is the outcome of nuclear using. And you have increasing victims, not only from Chernobyl, from the other nuclear power stations as well. So it is a complete crazy situation to go to nuclear power and believe it would be clean. No, the emissions of radioactivity are very hard, and nuclear power nearby is very, very expensive. It is not a good idea that your government decided for nuclear power stations. Come back to global warming. We have a new NASA report from January, this beginning of the year in January. Very tremendous. We stay at 1.2 degrees global warming. The temperature growth in the last decades was 0.18 degrees. We must await because the atmosphere is more full with climate gases, that in the today's decade, we will see a rise of about 0.2, 0.25. This means the Paris target, 1.5 degrees, will be exceeded latest by 2032. This is tremendous because 1.5 degrees is very hard for the world. We must stop it before. We have no time. We must organize in 10 years to stop all emissions, that the increase of temperature will be stopped. And the impact when we do not do this, when we go as business as usual everywhere, in Ukraine, in Germany, in Russia, in USA, in Australia, in every country, business as usual means the world will come by 2050 to 3 degrees global warming. What that means, highlighted researchers from Australia. The sea level will rise by 2050 by a half meter. Miami, New York, Shanghai, Amsterdam are partly underwater in 30 years. We would have annually 55% of global population are subject to more than 20 days of lethal heat conditions. They cannot overlive. They will die because of the heat. More than the half of the world population. We will see desertifications, food production will decline, and plenty others. You see it already as well in Ukraine. Look to the disasters of the farmers because of dry periods and others. We have it the same in Germany. The wood is dying in Germany as well as in Ukraine. Today, at 1.2 degrees warming, what will happen at 1.5? We must hurry up to go very fast. And we have only the possibility to go 2 parallel strategies. Both are very important. First is we must stop all greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. Stop it, not reduce emissions. In the center of zero emission economy stands 100% renewables. Energy system causes more than the half of all world emissions in greenhouse gases. Therefore, we have completely to stop the use of fossil and nuclear energies in energy, in chemistry, in transport, in agriculture, everywhere. And the second is take out the carbon from the atmosphere, green your areas, reforest, green the deserts, make organic agriculture and plenty more. We must cool down the earth, not accept global warming. How to go these strategies? We can show and could show it, Energy Watch Group, together with La Penranta University, that 100% renewable world is possible. We simulated the whole world, on every place on the world, in every hour, the whole year, we can bring the energy what the humankind needs. A coming 100% renewable system is complete other than the today's one. Left to see today's one in 2015, nearly 1/3, more than 1/3 from oil, from coal, from gas, only a few part from nuclear power, very few from renewable energies, only 10%. 100% renewables means most comes from solar, in the world 70%, 18% from wind, the rest bioenergy, hydropower and geothermal is very important because these three little ones, it is a big amount on world level scale, but these three ones can balance the fluctuations of wind and solar, and therefore they are important. We need less storages when we use hydropower, geothermal, and bioenergy as well. 100% renewables can come very fast. We can show it in Germany. When we introduced the Renewable Energy Act in 2000, with a green tariff, how you call it in Ukraine, feed-in tariffs in the world, we had a target to double the green electricity by 2010 from 6 to 12%. We were told it would be completely stupid, impossible. We cannot increase such fast, doubling in 10 years. Yes, it was indeed not easy because renewables were very expensive. We had nearly no factories to produce the technologies. We had nearly no people who were educated in renewable energies. So the beginning was very hard. But instead of these facts, we could manage that we over exceeded this target, 17%. And now you see in 2010, the government under Chancellor Merkel set a target for 2020 with 30% of renewable electricity. Beginning of this year, in the first quarter, we had 52, much more than everyone believed. And you must recognize in this decade from 2010 until 2020, the Chancellor Merkel government organized a lot of amendings in the legislation that had only one target: reduce the investment into renewables. Hinder it, stop it. But they did not make it really. If we would not had this 10 years long hindering of renewables in Germany, we would stand at 100% renewables already. The people are able to do it. The technology is ripe. We can do it. The question behind this success is, who were the actors who invested into renewables? The public discussion is mostly on the big financiers, on EIB, on KfW, on big utilities like E.ON, on Total or others. No, the secret in Germany is not the big structures were the investors into renewables. 90% of all investment into renewables until 2016, this great success, were decentralized actors, mostly individuals, farmers, small commercials, project developers, small banks like Raiffeisen banks and others. The big four utilities in Germany invested only 4%. They avoided, they refused to go to renewables. But this fact is well known at the moment, and the utilities now lobby the German government and others to roll back from decentralized actors to the big structures. And they do not see the positive impacts. Like we had it here. Look to the district Rhein-Hunsrück, an energy transition, a success story. They began 1995, and with the feed-in tariff law in 2000, they accelerated very fast. Now, They came from a poor house region in Germany to one of the most developed regions in Germany. They have nearly no debts. The GDP growth was very fast. They have nearly no people who have no work. A great, great success story. This is decentralized, cooperative, renewable investment as a basic behind this, what we can do. And all they could see, we have a lot of space. We can bring the solar power to plenty areas. Here you see a farmer in Italy who says, we have so plenty dry periods, too less rain. The shadowing of the modules save my yields from the farmland. On the right side in China, example, this farmer tells me, I have appropriate husbandry, plenty bio-eggs and others. The goose, the chickens, the pigs can find shadowing in the hot summer. They are very health care. Combine it and I have 2 yields, organic meat, organic corn and solar. Possibilities are great to combine everything. And when you look to the big areas, where should be the places? This is a wonderful picture from Kiev. On the Balkonia, this inhabitant makes his electricity by himself. Everyone could do it. We have possibilities enough. And it is the best idea to do it for yourself because it is the cheapest option now with energy. This is the most important outcome of the Renewable Energy Act, that the prices to produce solar and wind electricity have been fallen all the time. Now today, in 2020, nuclear production of electricity stands about €100 per megawatt hour. Fossil gas, hard coal, nearly the same. Wind power stands at 60, solar at 30, much cheaper. And in renewable, wind and solar, they will decline the prices the more we use it because of the learning curve that works. 100% renewables for Ukraine, we simulated it as well, means you have to switch to renewable electricity for your cars, for your trains, for your houses with heat pumps, everywhere. Renewable electricity will become 90% of the whole energy production. And you can do it. In Ukraine, you will have nearly the half from wind power and the other half from solar power, beside bioenergy, biogas, and others, renewables, geothermal, hydropower. You have so big potential, and now it is cheap. You should go this way. When you go this way, our simulation shows 100% renewables bring cheaper the energy than the today's system. When you discuss in Ukraine, you would have cheap electricity prices from nuclear and from coal. It is only cheap because you do not, the operators do not pay the damages in healthcare, the air pollution damages and others. And they are highly subsidized by taxpayers. Why do you spend your limited tax money to subsidize nuclear and coal power? To pollute the world, to pollute your healthcare. It is crazy. When you take away the subsidizing, renewables would be much, much cheaper. This is the truth, and you should look to the details with researchers. Often you will hear in the public discussion, fossil and nuclear business is the best and it will go on and most people invest in it, not only oligarchs, plenty others give the monies to fossil and nuclear. But latest with the Corona economic crisis, they all stand on the street. they have a double pitfall. In Corona crisis, the oil price, the gas price, coal, uranium prices declined very, very sharp. This declining showed the financiers to stop the financing. They told the investors, you have no return of investment with such deep prices. We cannot give your investment. It happens already in USA with fracking gas and fracking oil. Nearly all fracking gas situations are closed down now. Instead of they are highly overloaded with steps. On the other side, the fossil users and producers believe and hope, oh, see, the price will increase. Then the energy consumers will tell them, no, I do not take your expensive energy. I invest personally in renewable energies. It's much cheaper. Both leads to economic pressure for fossil and nuclear companies. They see it already. Everyone who goes on with fossil and nuclear is on an economic way stupid. He cannot see what happens really. Only renewables in energy sector can bring profits for the future. But you must organize it in your political agenda. Our political recommendations from Energy Watch Group is go to feed-in tariff. It is crucial until 40 megawatt. Auctioning is only possible for utility scale projects for gigawatt wind and solar farms. But the decentralized actors, the cooperatives, the community power needs a feed-in tariff and green tariff. And when you have discussion in Ukraine, and you have it very hard at the moment, that it would be too expensive for the electricity producers, then go with your government to European Union, beg for them for get fit financing. Let them flow from EIB the money to develop Ukraine, that this money flows to finance the green tariffs in Ukraine. This is a system get fit. We made a paper, you can have it. It is on our homepage. Some of you know this paper. Please go to your government and advise them to go this way. But it is also important, you must abolish fossil and nuclear subsidizing. A carbon, methane, radioactivity tax could be helpful, but very important is research, education, and campaigning, and reduce all the licensing obstacles. It's crazy. It's easier to get a license for a new nuclear power station than for a wind power station. Go the way to 100% renewables investment. Not only a wind park there, a solar park in the other background, a biogas station in the middle. Combine it. Make an investment, wind and solar and biogas together with storages in every object. Make 100% renewables investment. Make the combination with all sectors. Transport sector, heating sector, industry sector, everything can do it. This is my car. On the other side of the rooftop of my greenhouse, there are the solar roofs, and the solar electricity runs to my car. It's very cheap for me. I cannot understand that my neighbors will not do it. They are stupid. Our proposal for the government is, and for the parliament in Ukraine as well as in Germany, to make a new additional law with a green tariff that supports not only a solar investment, a wind investment, that supports an investment into 100% renewables, a combined power plant remuneration. The aim of this combined power plant is first to strengthen the expansion and use of renewables and to promote the systemically useful grid integration. That means renewables are able and can bring reliability for the grid operators. And they can do it and they should do it. And you can stimulate such investment with such a green tariff that brings it. Power generation demands each hour of the year 100% renewables. Then the tariff should be paid for it. The mix of 100% renewables is free for everyone. Every location is different to another location. Some locations you have more wind power, others you have more hydropower, you have solar power. Let them free to use the mix. They can bring grid stability, and the effects will be grid stability from bottom up, decentralized. It's easier to organize it than with big power lines. We see the sector coupling, a lot of huge innovations, and plenty others. And the get fit system, what I mentioned already, to finance all these issues is rich countries like European Union help other countries like Ukraine to finance climate protection. Ukraine can ask the European Green Deal to finance the green tariffs. This is the basic of get fit system. And you can bring it. We have examples that it happens and it does a good work. In Uganda already, it was 2030 introduced, financed with Deutsche Bank, KfW, from Great Britain and others. There is an example that it works. So my advice is, go this way. You can download all these papers from the Energy Watch Group homepage. You can send us an email. We will help your politicians, your leaders in Ukraine to go this way. When the willingness is there, also Ukraine can achieve 100% renewables by 2030. There is no question about technology, energy security, financing. It is only a question of the political will, and that's what we should achieve. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Fell. And it's really interesting because this presentation started from the problem and finalized with the action plan, like even for us. Because if we understand the problem, we should do something with that. But how you started your way, because I know that you have a story about it, because for us it's also important how each of us can influence from bottom up, not wait until someone will come to us and make the solution and provide the solution for us.
Yeah, it is a long history. I'm an old man. And therefore I have a lot of experience. First is in my youth, I learned about the possibilities and the necessities of renewables. When I was 18, I learned 100% renewables is the chance and the need for the world. I studied physics and learned all is possible. We must create only an industry revolution. And since this time, since the 70s, I worked on these issues, mostly accused from the peoples I would be a crazy man, stupid, no sense for economy. All my life I heard these arguments and accusing. But I was clear in my mind and I worked on it. First, on my house, I realized in 1985 100% renewable house. When I planned it, everyone told to me it is impossible. I did it. Later, in 1992, I became came into the authorities of my local town, Hammelburg, and I introduced with my colleagues in the Hammelburg Parliament worldwide the first feed-in tariff law for solar power. It was a revolution. Plenty of people believed not it could happen, but it worked. And we had a follow-up of plenty citizens later in Germany, from Munich, in Nuremberg, in Darmstadt, and plenty others. This was the first stimulus that feed-in tariff was accepted by parliaments, and they could see like a feed-in tariff can grow and can make it that an industry revolution can happen. With all this acknowledged, with all this, what I learned, I was elected to the German parliament in 1998. And I immediately began to work on a national law for feed-in tariff. I was told, you are stupid, it is impossible, it will never work. How will a big nation like Germany bring such a law? In 2000, we decided it with the help of plenty others, parliamentarians who worked on it, like Gsanger and others. And this revolution made it able that the people invested so fast, so strong. And we had so plenty in the communities they invested. And it was terrible to see for the big utilities. In 10 years, they lost 30% of their business by new actors, electricity production. And in this time, I went out to the world. I spoke with other nations. And one day I came back to Germany, I spoke with the Chinese to make a feed-in tariff law. It was in 2005. The commentary was, you are stupid, it is impossible, never will happen. Some years later, the Chinese introduced feed-in tariff, first for wind power in 2008, 2010 for solar power. Chinese became the biggest industry revolution in renewable energies. So my advice for you all is, do it. Do it by yourself, what you can do on your house, on your village, in your community, as a legislature. When you go this way, it can happen, that it could be reality.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Feld. And always when we hear that this is impossible, so then you see that impossible things becomes possible. But it's nice to know now men, human men like you, who really made those things already happen, and only because you believe in those things and they are needed. So please, now,
please, one point is very important. It was not me alone. I told it, and I could influence a lot of people with positive agenda, and they all together made it possible.
Yes, and that's great news.
Millions of people follow you when you go this way.
That's great news too, because here right now, I know that many participants and many people from the communities, they hear us, and they are not alone too. So we have hope now. Thank you very much. And I suggest that we go on. And now I please give the word to the other co-moderator, Maksym Shvets. The floor is yours, and you have another beautiful speakers here.
Yeah, thank you. Hello to everyone. I'm glad to move on our actual interesting and valuable discussion, and with pleasure will introduce the next speaker. Please welcome Caitriona Mullan, expert of cross-border and regional development of Association of European Border Regions. And we will speak, as far as I know, we will speak about the role of border regions in economic growth, importance of cohesion funding, and how it's uniting in the importance of networking for connecting regions to work together. Caitriona, are you ready just to start the presentation?
Yes, I am not. Hello, thank you, Maksym. Thank you, Yaryna. I'm not going to use PowerPoint, so I'm just going to speak.
That's fine.
I hope that's okay. So thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in the forum. I've been listening with interest to the discussion this afternoon, and so it's always, I think, sometimes hardest to be the last speaker because you get so many ideas as you're listening to other people on top of what you had already prepared. So I'll do my best. As has been said, my name is Caitriona Mullan, and I am an independent expert with the Association of European Border Regions. And I'll tell you a bit about the AEPR first. The AEPR, some of you may know us. We are an independent NGO, non-governmental organization, with offices in Berlin and Gronau in Germany. We were established in 1971. And the purpose of the Association of European Border Regions, AEPR, is to raise the profile of the needs of cross-border regions and to promote the profile of cross-border cooperation as a tool for integration, as a tool for peace and stability. Since the enlargement of the EU began in serious format in the 1990s, our work became more important, and the work of cross-border cooperation became more important for Europe. And at the same time, during this period, the European Union was coming to this realization that the European integration project required the support to come to border regions, because if you think about it, and I don't know what the percentage of Ukrainians living in border regions is, but if you just think about your country and you think about how many people of your population live in a border region, then you suddenly see how important supporting cross-border cooperation is for balanced economies and for economic growth. A little bit more about AEPR. We have consultative status with DG Regio, which is the department within the European Commission, which is responsible for regional development affairs, which has a huge role to play in the development of priorities for cohesion funding. AEPR as an organization, we have over 100 member regions from across the European Union and outside of the European Union, including members which are regions from the Eastern neighborhood. So we're not confined to the European Union. On behalf of these members, we research, we promote good practice, we connect regions with each other. Regions who want to connect on a particular agenda are always welcome to contact us and to cast the net out for other regions who are interested in working with them. The key areas of interest that the Association of European Border Regions has at a macro level, of course, we're interested in all aspects of cross-border cooperation, but at the moment we have special focuses on external borders. We have a special focus on health and health cooperation across borders. We are also very interested in the issues of university and innovation cooperation on a cross-border basis, and also in the role of spatial planning and place-based leadership as a tool for growth. AEPR in Ukraine has an information office. We have an information office in Kharkiv, which is based within the Simon Kuznets University. My colleague, Edward Sillermolot, runs our information office in Ukraine. And over recent months, AEPR in Ukraine has been running a series of seminars for our member regions. We have 11 Euroregions or border regions in Ukraine who are members of the Association of European Border Regions. So we have been facilitating dialogue on key themes for regional development and cross-border cooperation. And the themes have included culture, education, clean energy, ecology and agritourism. And we will be conducting some discussions on cross-border health later in the summer or in early autumn. In July, we are hoping to summarize all of the project ideas and the projects that have been identified as part of these discussions as priorities. So my colleague, Mr. Kubilius, referred to the need for bankable projects, lists of bankable projects and lists of priorities. What I see from our discussions through the School for Civic Diplomacy in Ukraine that AEPR has run, what I see is that there is no shortage of ideas. There is no shortage of bankable project structures, intellectual capital in the regions in Ukraine. So in terms of where exactly the absorption capacity problem is, I think it may lie between central administration and the regions, in that space between. And for the Association of European Border Regions, we understand these issues very well because we work with regions in every country in Europe. There is always the challenge of creating a connection between regions and regional growth and the center of administration. There is always a constant process of persuasion for people who maybe have a central administrative perspective to understand that supporting regions and supporting strong regions to grow economically and socially, culturally, creates a strong economy and creates stability. What AEPR would like to see is an ongoing dialogue like this. We would love to contribute to that. We want to work with those who in Europe and in Ukraine who want to see Ukraine included and resourced through the cohesion funds. We see, and we are giving a very clear message in Brussels and in other fora, that there is a huge opportunity for the European Union to support Ukraine at the moment. The key is going to be getting the mechanisms right, making sure that the centre and the regions and the grassroots and the civil society activity are being joined up in Ukraine, and that also that the European Union delegations to Ukraine understand this, which I know they do. The special role of cross-border cooperation in relation to innovation, in relation to adding value, is something that the AEPR focus on, because that is our core business. The idea of borders as peripheral becomes a bit of a nonsense when you look across Europe and you suddenly realize that border regions are central to being able to move from one country to another. If you want to move from one country to another, you have to go through a border region. We are not on the periphery. So these kind of concepts where we can turn traditional paradigms of territorial cooperation on their heads are very important. I'm going to talk a little bit more about borders and borders as zones for fertile economic renaissance. I have to say, I grew up on the land border between the UK and Ireland. That's where I live now. It's where I'm speaking to you from. So I live in a city that is right on the border. 1 mile away is the European Union, and in the city centre, we are in the UK. That city is Derry in the northwest of Ireland. In terms of the role of cross-border cooperation as a tool for integration and as a tool for renaissance, I think it's very important to acknowledge that historically borders have been trading zones. Border areas and border regions where people met. They are where civilizations intersected. If you look at borders, they have always been places of wonderful cultural mix, innovation, creativity. Border people have to come up with creative solutions to daily life sometimes, and that creativity is an asset for economic renaissance. Border regions are places where cultures mix. They are places where friendships are formed. They are the places that are the spaces between the centers, so they are places of creativity. They're places of inspiration, and they are places of great potential for drawing on a mix of economic traditions and to innovate. The other thing I wanted to say was that in terms of economic renaissance in Ukraine and anywhere, the role of place-based leadership is very important. And I think there is a great understanding of that in Ukraine already, that you must have the business sector, you must have the education sector, the universities. You also need the elected officials to understand what is going on and to work with those economic sectors and to work with the interests of the place. So I think there is tremendous potential in Ukraine for this, but I think we still have some joining up to do. In terms of your economic renaissance, I think there is also, and I'm going to say this based on the Irish experience of having a national brand, there is a great potential in all of the new economic activity that is emerging in Ukraine to communicate the idea of Ukraine through your branding, through the renewable, the clean energy brand, through I suppose using commerce and using trade as ways of communicating an idea of your country. And I think that has tremendous value, not only for inward investment to your country, but also in opening gates, opening doors, and creating that recognition that on the border of the European Union, there is this place that holds the answer to so many historical secrets of Europe, in terms of the archaeology, in terms of the heritage, in terms of your art, your musical composition, your science, your tradition of scientific research, all of these things. So what I wanted to do was, I'd be very happy to talk, and I will be involved in more discussions around technical aspects of integration and cooperation and the tools. But what I wanted to leave you with today was just something that I wrote after my first visit to Ukraine, because I think I had never been in Ukraine before. So it was my first impression, and it converted me to becoming an advocate for Ukraine as a European partner. And as a country that has just so much potential. It is, and you have so much to give. It is not just about receiving. You have so much to give other countries that are struggling with new economic models, that are struggling with shifting to renewables. You have a renewable sector at the moment that, yes, is frustrated because of a lack of enablement at central government level and the issue around tariffs, but you have a strong sector who are waiting to deliver. There are many other countries that don't have that. So you have so much to teach other people as well. So I would just say have confidence about that. So I'm going to read a little bit of just my reflection of Ukraine, just as an example of the impression that your country can create on someone for the first time. So I wrote, a people full of empathy and young energy, committed to building an inclusive, open and fair future. A sophisticated and generous people with a particular quiet gentility and warmth. A country which was the melting pot of the peoples and civilizations of the ancient world. A country which is diverse in its heritage and yet finds a way and beyond and celebrating difference. A country with boundless natural resources and rich land for farming. A country with a proud and long history of innovation and technological advancement, contributing to all of humanity, which has now made leaps with clean energy. A place from where music, art, and architecture through the ages have inspired us all, whether we realize it or not. A place where food is love, from where the Golden Gate stands and the two cathedrals of St. Sophia and St. Michael watch over the people of Kiev, to where the Danube flows through the vineyards of Bessarabia, through the ancient city of Ismail to its end in the brilliance of the Black Sea, overlooked by Odessa, its architecture and vibrant port city life. The country is Ukraine, the anchor of Europe. Let it be so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And that was a really impressive speech, and really transborder cooperation is a great issue because we are just bordering with 7 countries. And the question, you simply just answered my question, what were your expressions from Ukraine in your business meetings? But maybe the question, what will be, and you see what are the next main steps to do that Ukraine expand its transborder cooperation, collaboration, and such projects will be more than we have now. And just as for technical and practical issues, I just tell our participants that on October we will speak about technical issues on EuroWeeks, and maybe just better to prepare for EuroWeeks, you can give some practical advice.
Yes. Yes, I should have said, I that was my omission, that AEPR is also supporting the delegation of Sustainable Ukraine to participate in the European Week of Regions and Cities. And this is the first time that Ukraine will be represented at the Week of Regions and Cities. And it is the biggest event. My colleagues from the European Union here will know that the Week of Regions and Cities is one of the biggest events in the European calendar for sharing ideas and for showcasing what cooperation in regions can look like, and also for making partnerships. So we're very supportive of it and delighted to be able to be associated with the Sustainable Ukraine proposal. And I know that's going to be the topic in the next session, so I'll not talk too much about it.
Just maybe one more question, little question. How among that regional administration bodies just to form leaders and just how to train maybe them or just to promote them on their positions? How just what was the experience in other regions in Europe to make from bottom up changes?
I think one of the central concepts that's very useful for building the capacity at local and regional level for regional development on the one hand, and then cross-border cooperation, because you do cross-border cooperation to develop your region, not the other way around, is a commitment to the place. And I think that particularly where you have areas where perhaps borders are contested, like the place that I live in, the idea of a place is something that everybody can agree that they are committed to developing, regardless of what their ethnicity is, regardless of what their background is. The place is the place that everyone loves. The place is the place that people want to develop. I think it is important that there are training and capacity building programs for local government officials and for regional administrations, but not just training and capacity building. There needs to be space for officials to work in the way that is needed to collaborate territorially. So it's a question of not just delivering training, but supporting people as they go through their daily work, because starting to lead collaborative cooperation, particularly from within the public sector, and I have worked in the public sector for a very long time here and in Ireland, you need the space and the oxygen to be able to work slightly differently. So it's about giving people the education and the tools, but it's also about giving them the support and forming networks that allow them to stay strong and stay resilient and to keep working together, even when there are challenges. Every organization, every local administration will have challenges from time to time where the daily business has to take priority over the cooperation with neighbors. But I think if you provide those supportive networks and facilitate those and allow people to come together. So for example, the AEPR is going to facilitate the General Assembly of Ukrainian border regions. We were supposed to be holding it this week in Ukraine, but coronavirus got in the way. So we're hoping that that will be something that will provide an opportunity for regions to come together and have some structure, but also to be able to network freely. Someone, I think it was Yaryna at the very beginning of this session, spoke about the need for businesses and people involved in business to have support networks and to be able to support each other and share ideas and also access ideas, capacity building, inspiration. It's exactly the same for public administrators. They need the same thing. And also then to be able to interact with the business sector in the place. So someone also, I think it was, I can't remember who it was, but at the very beginning of our discussion today referred to the intellectual ecology of a place. I think that was a wonderful phrase, and you need everyone, but everyone needs to be supported to do that. So I don't know if
Thank
that
you.
makes it clear.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was really interesting and just really up-to-date information for us, and also the area to development in Ukraine. As far as I see, just unfortunately, we do not have among the speakers Viola from Cramon and maybe some technical issues. So that's just I will put maybe the question from the chat. Several people asked the same maybe question, and not maybe even the question, but the comment. There is a comment that the green energy is. Oh, I'm sorry. Just we have Viola von Cramon with us, and I will just shortly represent because we are really lack of time. It's highly experienced politician, vice president of European Union Ukrainian Association Committee, member of European Parliament, member of Bundestag, expert in politics, in transformation. And the main idea of presentation, as far as I see, is to highlight main issues of the Green Deal. It's just like the core document now in Europe. It's like roadmap for Europe for next several years. And I will just ask you maybe brief to tell us what will wait Europe and what will wait Ukraine connected with this issue with Green Deal. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Sorry to escape my office. I couldn't stand it anymore. The weather is just marvelous outside, so escaped a little bit, and now I'm sitting outside, which is obviously not the appropriate place normally to hold video conferences from, but nevertheless, I hope you can excuse this for 15 minutes. Well, yes, the European Green Deal is one of the core projects which or should be in the center of European politics for the next 5 years at least, and it is the core project of the European Commission, and it is also, of course, it will be aligned by the European Parliament and hopefully in the same dimension by the European Council. The idea is to become the first CO2 neutral continent, which is very ambitious. And therefore, we have to work in all the different sectors, in all the different fields, from energy supply, from industry in general, from mobility, from circular economy, agriculture in general, and also our, consumption must be in a way reversed and reorganized, which might be difficult at the beginning, but nevertheless, it is up to us if we would like to keep the rise of temperature below 2%, which is, of course, already being, let's say, might be a little bit late. We first, of course, had a target of 1.5%, 1.5 Celsius degree, and now we are up to 2%. But nevertheless, I think the ceiling should be not higher than this. For this, we need to, first of all, change our energy supply in a significant way. And for countries such as Ukraine, which is still heavily relying on coal, gas, oil, and even nuclear, this will be a big challenge, of course. But that's why we were lobbying already for the last years. And I know that Hans-Josef is one of your speakers. I think he's one of the biggest lobbyists and promoters in a positive way of a change towards renewables. And the change in the, let's say, industrial sector is one thing, but of course you have to work on mentality of people. You have to work on the awareness of why is it necessary and how can this be managed. And this is something which needs to be started actually from the bottom, from the grassroots, as well as from the top. And from my last experience in Ukraine, I would say that it is not easy to see like a vision or a concept or something from let's say, the energy point of view, where the current government, where the executive branch is taking up on this issue. And I think this is something which needs to be pushed by think tanks such as yours, civil society, regions, city councils, and all the people who are engaged in this topic. So if we come to the point where now we have a speaker, a head of the energy committee, who actually pushes back from the feed-in tariffs, from an ambitious law for renewable energy, back to coal, back to oil, back to gas. This is really a very, very sad development, and it should be risen and discussed in a much broader sense than it is now. And the same for industries. I think the different sectors are obvious. We have to work on climate neutral production. I've just given an interview for the Deutsche Welle, where we spoke about this IKEA production scandal now, where finally it was published that IKEA works with illegal logging already for a long time. This is, of course, not just a problem for Ukraine. It is also a problem for transnational companies who exploit and misuse the situation, such as in Ukraine. But nevertheless, it should be in the interest of Ukraine not to let the last wild nature and forests be gone into cheap chairs and tables, which are then here sold for just a couple of euros. So this is really sad that obviously one of the driving forces is profit maximizing, but it is also very much supported by corrupt structures in Ukraine. And therefore, I would say we need awareness, we need more public awareness in all this environmental field, but also in terms of how you treat your, let's say, raw material. We see very, I think, prosperous development. We have seen a lot of foreign direct investment into renewables by international investors. That was actually for the last 2 years. The biggest foreign direct investment came from renewables, and therefore we should really ask the government to look very carefully through the draft legislation, that not just this belief and the trust and the credibility in this sector will be destroyed while the government might abolish this. When it comes to agriculture, I think this will be also some more pressure coming from the European Union when it comes to animal welfare, when it comes to climate neutral production. I don't want to go into details, but I could imagine that there might be more integrated production, more, let's say, extensive and ecological friendly production integrated in the conventional production, what we have seen in the past. But I guess Ukraine, with the black soil and the general provision and conditions in agriculture, is well prepared for this.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Justin. Maybe we have some time for the questions. Maybe the first question is, what are the main steps that Ukraine must do that in order to implement that Green Deal in Ukraine? How to start that Ukrainian-European Green Deal? Just what maybe 3 main steps?
Well, this is not a once or two step thing. This is a multi-level action plan, and will take a while, but at least I think you should put into consideration, many people work already on this in Ukraine, and they should be heard and they should be included And it should be, I mean, they should not be deterred. What I've seen now in the west of Ukraine, when you speak to environmental activists, when you speak to visionists, I mean, they are under pressure, they are under threat. And this would be the main thing for me, instead of fighting against them, instead of putting police force on them, get them alive and give them space and let them debate and include them into your political agenda. Yeah, and I wish the president, who has a high popular ranking still after 1 year of being elected, he should be courageous. He should open up the space for debate. As I said, I see many projects in terms of energy and housing, building, how we live also in Ukraine, where you have very cold winters and hot summers. How can we insulate in a, let's say, climate-friendly way the houses? And these are questions, they are all already being solved, but you need like financial incentives that people build in the way which are sustainable. And so far, I see many things are already known, but they are not realized in a, let's say, practical way or practical term.
Thank you once again. And we have one question from the chat. Maybe it's for all participants, because we spoke a lot of renewable energy. And people in the chat wrote in that maybe we are not ready for renewable energy because it can kill economy, because now just atomic energy is rather cheap, and after transferring to renewable energy, you see that it will rise the cost of it in the cost of production, and they are
Nothing,
just telling people to postpone it.
Nothing is cheaper than the sun. I guess most of the territory in Ukraine has more sun than we have here. During summertime, from February or March until winter, we normally just heat the water with the sun. This is could be easily done on most of the houses, and that's not expensive. And I mean, I know that your nuclear power stations, they're from the 70s, they're from the 80s. You can easily calculate how much it would cost to rebuild them. No insurance will ever take over an insurance for a new power plant. And where does this technology come from? It mainly comes from Russia. I don't know whether this, in terms of energy autonomy, is a very smart strategy. So, I mean, of course, not for tomorrow. You cannot go from one to the other, but you can take a big part of your consumption out and decentralize it and give the opportunity to your people, to the citizen, invest their money, not just offshore, as many people do, not just buy apartments and houses or things or cars, but invest it into the future, invest it in renewable energy. And if this is financially attractive and people know, okay, this is what makes a difference, and I can also make some money out of this, that's easy to organize. And so I don't think it's a question of money. It's a question of how you political wise organize this process.
Hans, can you add maybe in brief something just to that issue? Or maybe Stefan, some words also about the renewable energy.
Happy to do that. And I must say, I'm a bit shocked when I hear the country where Chernobyl disaster happened, that how can people still speak about cheap nuclear power? That's just out of my imagination. We're all paying billions still. I mean, it's also, we know that European money goes there, and the people suffering from that still. I visited Chernobyl last year, and it's just so obvious that this is nonsense, because just look at how much it costs, how cheap it is today. Buy your small solar panel, even if you live in an apartment in Kiev. You can buy now these 300 watt for maybe $200-300 or so. Make your own power. You see how cheap it is, how much money you save. Do it, as Hans-Josef said, do it by yourself. That's the easiest way of learning it. And you will not have any pollution. You will not have your father or yourself or somebody getting cancer. I mean, I heard these tragedies. It's not just something invented. And do it, learn, and then it's easy to go from that step, a step from there to wind and more hydro and all the bioenergy potential that the country has, which would be so fantastic. I mean, now you still discuss about getting gas from where. The bioenergy you have can create income for the farmers. It'd be so wonderful for the country. So this is easy to answer, and we can just, I can just refer to the latest Yaryna publications, which just say renewables are cheapest now.
Thank you. It was sharp question and rather clear answers. And I need to sum up our panel session because time is coming. And just to sum up, I would like to say that we have received rather clear messages from our speakers where Ukraine should go for and where will be the closest things just to do together with the European Union, like in cooperation in renewable energy. Like cooperation is the key thing that stands behind all major processes, and like just you say that community power was very interesting thing, and just we see that we need more clear and understandable and rather feasible projects to do, not just to wait that somebody just will give money for just something that is not can be just sustainable in a long-term perspective. And as for the renewable energy, I think that maybe the issue not now even in the price or maybe in economic issues, but we need to see about more drastic issues like health and well-being of our future generations. Thank you to all speakers. It was rather interesting, valuable, and up-to-date discussion with us. I will just in some words present two future sessions that will be in some time. The first will be successful investments in Ukraine, practical cases that you can just see that were realized by companies in Ukraine in different areas, in creative economy, impact investments, and so on. And the next session, parallel session, will be sustainable Ukraine. It's like I have already told, the presentation of 18th European week of regions and cities, and we will just have very interesting speakers, so that I will invite you in just in some minutes. Our just moderators will tell us when it will be. So thank you very much once again. Thank you, Yaryna. It was very pleasant discussion. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
I have to apologize. I put in my calendar, of course, the European time, and for me it was just in time. And then I understood you of course gave me the Kiev time. That's why I was 1 hour too late. I really apologize. Sorry about this.
But it was great final
Yes.
session.
I didn't get it. I was in video conferences before, but I wanted to be in time. But then I realized it was the wrong time.
Viola, you was not alone.
Oh, sorry.
We thank you all for the participation. We invite you to participate in the section Sustainable Ukraine. It's enough to go on the other link, Sustainable Ukraine, and we will discuss about the participation of Ukrainian delegation in Euro Region Week from 12 to 15 October, because for us it's very important your consultation, your thinking, your thoughts, because we would like to present Ukraine on the best level and to demonstrate that in Ukraine we have very intellectual teams, persons who work and want to and see the future in our country together with European Union. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. All
Thank
the best.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.